Chapter 51 Chiyo's Dilemma. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The girl's eyes glowed in shock as she nodded her head severally, in agreement, causing several people to be confused and taken aback as well. They couldn't help rereading Dorian's signboard in silence. Could it be that this fellow was truly a divination master? This thing wouldn't be a fairy tale, right? Everyone scrutinized the young man again while still listening carefully too. Of course, in the back of their mind, this thing was impossible. But what if it were true? Dorian scrutinized Chiyo's face again before rolling talisman paper and taking out a calligraphy pen, as well as some ink too. Miss Chiyo. Just a month ago, your father suddenly had a major accident in the factory, and your mother also had a deep-rooted accident while working in the kitchen. Coincidentally, your brother also fell ill too. But no matter how many times you took him to the hospital, the doctors all said he was fine. And presently, you also feel weak and heavy from time to time as well, right? Bam! Chiyo slapped the table in acknowledgement. The more the Grandmaster spoke, the more she felt that all these things were too coincidental and too abrupt. What were the odds that everyone in her family would face disasters at once? No. It was too coincidental. So could it be that some family member had secretly instructed or done foul play behind the scenes? Could it be a jealous worker that worked alongside her parents? She had watched such scheming movies before and felt that it should be the case. But what didn't make sense was how her brother had suddenly fallen ill. And how she too was feeling weaker and weaker as the days went by. Wait. Could they have been poisoned? Degree 0 degree, Chiyo's mind was going haywire. At present, she was the only one supporting her entire family. Her family's entire savings had gone down the drain, just looking for doctors to treat her father, mother and brother. She hadn't even considered treating herself yet but was already very discouraged. Her family was very ordinary, with her parents working within the newly opened factories and bookings around the village. So she had always paid a lot to come to this nearby city and keep her parents in the hospital. And as time went by, the bills were charging up, with the doctors carrying out all sorts of tests and checking things out daily to treat her parents. But no matter what they did, her parents' condition seemed to be getting worse instead. Additionally, her brother was so ill that even walking was too much for him. So he stopped going to kindergarten and had to stay with her all day. Again, she herself was driven out of school after getting framed, and also found work as a waitress. And typically, she would bring her brother and plead with the manager to keep him in the staff room while she worked. But today didn't seem like her lucky day. Her brother accidentally offended the big boss of the restaurant who came in for an inspection. That boss had been trying to get her in his bed but failed. So he used this excuse to fire her, whispering in her ears that she would be back to beg him. She was so angry that she wanted to lash out. But suddenly, her brother started feeling bad again. All these things were happening too fast and too coincidental that now, after listening to Dorian, she suddenly felt it suspicious. Chiyo. Follow the money. Follow the money. Who is behind all of this? Who will gain more without family down? She thought long and hard but still couldn't come up with any real enemies. Why? What wrong did her family ever do to that person? Instantly, grief overcame Chiyo as her heart stumbled over its own rhythm. She took deep breaths, fighting back her tears while tightening her grip on her little brother. The more she heard, the more she felt like the person behind the scenes must be someone very powerful. Then if that was the case, then what if she failed? What if she couldn't save her family in the end? The weight of it all rested on her shoulders, making it harder for her to breathe. But was she just going to give up? No way. She must find out the culprit behind the scene. Even if it's the last thing she did. Grandmaster. Do you know who is behind it all? I just received my dismissal fee today, and I'm ready to raise and pay whatever amount to find the culprit. I'll also pay to treat my brother as well. Everyone listened and was alarmed by her outburst. They stared googly-eyed at Dorian, with their bodies trembling in shock. Wait. So. All this young master said was true. How did he do it? How did he know? Impossible. This must be a game drama set up by the duo. Like so, more and more people nodded their heads when this thought came up. The facts had slapped everyone hard and were already before them all. Yet, they still held the highest doubts possible. But whether they believed or not, Chiyu didn't care because she believed in him. No one had heard this Grandmaster speak to her in her mind earlier on. So they didn't know just how terrifying this Grandmaster might be. Dorian finished drawing up four protective charms, leaned back and gazed at her calmly. Your problem isn't a human one. Chiyu and everyone else were confused. Grandmaster. What do you mean? Well, it's simple. Your life, as well as your brother's, was supposed to continue going on straight due to the good fortunes of your parents and even your good doings. In fact, within the next few years, your future was supposed to be brighter and powerful than your current life's worth. But unfortunately, someone has stolen your luck. Boom. I knew it. She exclaimed in rage while gritting her teeth hard, making everyone watching jump in alarm. This was crazy. But to Chiyu, it made so much sense. This might sound weird, but she always felt like something was constantly being drawn away from her. She had excellent grades with scholarships. Thus, her parents had never had to pay her tuition. But then, not too long ago, she got involved in a cheating scandal, which was all fake. However, no matter how she explained, everyone sneered coldly at her, with some claiming to have seen her cheat before. Others also claimed that her previous results were also due to cheating. It was so strange that no one, even her closest teachers, didn't trust her at all. And for the first time in her life, she felt trapped with nowhere to go. Everything was just too strange and unbelievable. But now, she felt like she knew why. Ha 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 ha. Chiyu laughed maniacally while continuously crying in agony. Who was it? Who the bloody hell stole her luck? Chapter 52 The Temptations from the Dark Side. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chiyo's mind was immersed in a turbulent storm when she thought of all she and her family had been through these past few weeks just to survive. At the same time, those who heard Dorian's words wouldn't help trembling in disbelief. Luck can be stolen. This was undoubtedly the craziest thing they had ever heard in their lives. And even though a greater part of them still didn't believe it, seeing the girl's reaction, they started to ask themselves. What if it were true? Miss Chiyu. Like I said, your luck, fate, destiny and good karma had placed you very high above others. That's why even though everyone in your home is seriously affected, you are the only one who can still move on your feet. Your boundless luck is being drawn at an astronomical rate. And by the time it's all taken out, you will not live for more than a week. That's serious. Butler Sheng, Julin and Rollin looked at Chiyu and couldn't help looking at her pitifully. And looking at her, one could see that her skin was ashen and sick-looking. She was moving on a very bleak road. And from what Dorian said, didn't this mean that she could drop dead at any time? At a visible rate, Chiyo's face grew paler when she heard Dorian's words. Her words were stuck in her throat as she now fully understood the hidden fear that had been ticked away in her heart these past few days. It was death. That's right. She had instinctively felt like her time was near. But she dared not give in because of her family. Chiyu felt like strangling the bastard who stole her luck. Grandmaster. Who was it? Was it someone I know? Grandmaster, just point me to the person's direction and say no more, she said coldly. Someone was going to die, and it wouldn't be her. Dorian thought deeply about this matter. Something wasn't right here. System, if I can recall your exact words. Didn't you say that there were no exorcists in this world? Then how is it possible that someone would have the right knowledge and know so much about luck transfer? Are you testing my patience? Host. Host. Don't be angry. There are indeed no exorcists in this world. But host, have you forgotten about the temptations of the devil? The temptations of the... Yes. Dorian's eyes lit up as he now had a hunch about it all. Back in his old world, with good and bad cultivators and exorcists available, the demons and devils didn't even need to stretch and go so far to bring chaos into the world. With greedy and vile cultivators roaming around, their world was done. But here, they had to do the work for themselves. The temptations of the dark side. There were plenty of them. Some sold their souls to the devil in this world for power, while others did countless other things as well. And the demons, devils and whatnot never made deals face to face. They would appear in dreams and other forms. Only when they were ready to devour their targets would they show their true selves. And believe it or not, even now, they always gave humans the right to choose and carry out their own deeds. If Dorian's guess was accurate, some demon or thing appeared to someone in a dream or even left notes or sent mails to a person close to or around Chiyu, telling them about her luck. And demons were all schemers and liars. So they could have been putting thoughts into the person's head for months and even a while, saying sentences like, "You will never be better than her. Look at her, she's better than you." They often went to those who were already extremely jealous, greedy, selfish and just needed a tiny push to do bad. Those they targeted in this method were those who were almost all dark inside. For those who were too bright and promising, they would never use this method but choose other ways instead. Why? Because the good would always be second guessing and might end up refusing to do bad and die naturally, still not doing what they wanted. Good people were the most annoying to demons. Converting their souls was too distressing. Like in the case with Chiyu, although she was so mad enough to say she wanted to kill the culprit, she still wouldn't go that far. Provided her luck was good, she was fine with the person going to jail or something in that line. How would she be able to live with herself if she went to the extreme? There were many people in the world like this who just wanted justice, and that was all. And with neutral people with slightly balanced yin and yang in their hearts and lives, just like Sota, the demons and other underworld entities would taunt them in various ways instead. In short, there were various groups of humans. But the wicked were the best and easiest to deal with. With a push from them, the culprit would then start stalking Chiyu, wanting to know everything about her. And seeing the enmity and darker thoughts from the person, the devil or demon watching from the sidelines would wait for the opportune moment before accidentally revealing how to do a luck exchange. But because they don't want the information to circulate and accidentally reach even a good person who might counter-attack their plans, they tell the person involved that they only have this one chance for luck exchange. This was just one scenario. In other cases, these demons would lie to many and say that Chiyu had robbed their luck instead. And thus, with vengeance in mind, these people would want to get their luck back from Chiyu. In short, the culprit is definitely someone she knows. The temptations of the dark side. In some other cases, some would be directly granted the ability to do well in business, others would be given the ability to sing and whatnot. But all this would be done after selling their soul out, saying that the heavens had no control over them again. In that case, they would never reincarnate. Ever. Dorian analyzed things silently before settling his gaze at Chiyu again. Think hard. Before the troubles began. Was there someone strange always around you? Did this person give you anything, take anything from you, or even visit your home? Think long and hard, Miss Chiyu, because that person is most likely the culprit. Chapter 53, Bonus Chapter, A Sealed Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Miss Chiyu. Think long and hard. Yes, Grandmaster. With that, Chiyu fell deep in thought, focusing on the period before it all began. From her life at home, school, and every other place, Chiyu thought for a bit before suddenly frowning suspiciously. Would she be the one? Lo, Grandmaster. Before the catastrophe began, one of my classmates, whom I rarely spoke to, suddenly started getting weirdly friendly with me. At first, I felt suspicious. But after several weeks, she did seem very legit. After a long period, she asked for my full birth date, saying she wanted to surprise me. I only wanted to tell her the day and month when my birthday was. But she kept insisting that she wanted the year too. She even cried, saying that if I wasn't comfortable telling her my full birth date, how can we share other hidden secrets amongst girls? Grandmaster. With her constant crying, I finally said so. Following that, she started coming to her house frequently. But whenever she came, there was something strange that she did. She would take out an ordinary-looking comb and comb my hair while we talked. She did this for a while before gifting me the comb. Then just after that, she just suddenly said she wanted to travel for a one-week family emergency. And after she left, my troubles began. Chiyu said while realizing the severity of the matter now that she analyzed things. Several people listening also found it strange. No one asks for the year when mentioning a birth date. Women have even said their age or how old they were. So all that was important was celebrating the day. But this person wanted the full birth date. And she most likely should have also gone to the Chiyo's home to do other things there too. Even though those listening still found it all too inconceivable, that girl is also suspicious and well. Dorian tapped his fingers on the table, deep in thought. Miss Chiyu, I will help you. But first, you will take me to your home, and show me this comb, as well as your family. And after you will take me to this girl. Only then will we know if she is the real culprit behind the scenes or not. Upon hearing him, Chiyo's smile bloomed amidst her tears while staring at Doran in gratitude. Thank you, Grandmaster. Thank you. I, Chiyu, will never forget this favor in my life. She swore before suddenly thinking of something that made her smile turn bitter. Grandmaster. Sorry. But can you do something about my brother? I promise that I will pay you whatever amount you want. Dorian waved his hands casually. Miss Chiyu. Since you are my first customer here, you won't need to pay. Hey. Chiyu looked up in shock. Was she the Grandmaster's first customer? What the hell was wrong with people nowadays? Were they blind or so crazy that they couldn't see the Grandmaster's greatness? Chiyu was busy talking about others, forgetting that she had also disregarded Dorian not too long ago. But ever since she had somewhat come to terms with the fact that her luck had been taken away, she somewhat believed in the abnormal. However, she didn't believe in magic and just thought it was something spiritual. Like the soul or something of that sort. Well, what she believed in was far less than Dorian's capabilities. Dorian glanced at her brother before flicking his wrist hard. And before Chiyu and everyone could even blink, a talisman paper was firmly planted on the boy's forehead. Who? The boy's breathing slowed down, regaining a steady pace, making him flutter his eyelids and open his eyes heavily. Sister, it doesn't hurt anymore. Chiyu looked at her brother in disbelief before finally letting out the waterworks again. It was a miracle. Her eyes couldn't help glancing at the ordinary paper on his forehead too. Could it be the reason why his body temperature and everything else was returning to normal? At a very visible and alarming rate, several people directly beside Chiyu watched the boy's whitish pale face change back to a vibrant one in disbelief. I'll go. What sort of paper was that? One could fake an act. But changing one's skin or blood flow the way they wanted was impossible. Everything made many gaze at Dorian with various thoughts of their own. Especially the lady who rented out her stall to Dorian. Oh my God. She had rented it out to a master. Hey. They all saw how he flicked his wrist like nothing and threw that paper on the boy's head at a speed she couldn't see. So if this wasn't kung fu, then what was? The way she looked at Dorian changed. Now, she and many people didn't think he was crazy or lecherous again. Chiyu turned to Dorian with even more gratitude in her eyes. Grandmaster. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, until this is all done, Dorian said calmly. In truth, he hadn't fully treated or aided her brother yet. If he did so, the enemy would be alert. So for now, he could only mask things up until the end of the show. Miss Chiyu. It's already late. So tomorrow at 10 a.m., come to this address. Also, take these and place them on your parents and yourself. Chiyu nodded and stretched her hands forth to receive the remaining paper charms with trembling hands. F******. She felt like she was about to touch gold. Hello. Don't you see the power of this paper from her brother's case? She dared not play, twist or even hold them carelessly. She was like a person who had just bought a new phone or something. She even felt like her hands were too dirty to come in contact with them. Many who saw the scene had started changing their minds but were still more inclined to not believe it all. And just when everyone thought the show was over, Dorian suddenly turned towards a lady who had just now joined the crowd of watchers. She didn't understand what was going on and had only stopped to see what the small commission was about. Dorian turned his head and looked at her grimly. Someone in your home isn't what they are supposed to be. And tonight, your deaths have all been sealed. Chapter 54 The Life of the Rich. You are listening at Novel.Audio. Silence. The scene turned ghastly silent as tension quickly covered the air around them. Now, everyone's attention was on the lady. Even Chiyu looked at the woman deeply, feeling fear for the woman's case. Tonight, she murmured to herself. The Grandmaster had said that she, Chiyu, would eventually die if her problem wasn't solved. But in this woman's case, the Grandmaster was telling her that tonight was her death date. So wasn't that more tragic and scary? She couldn't help looking at the lady sympathetically. Hey! She thought that she was the most pitiful person here, but who knew that there was still someone else whose case was worse than hers? Envied, alas, so young too. R.I.P. sis. Chiyu looked at the lady as if looking at her cursor lowering down into a grave. And coincidentally, the lady in question saw Chiyu's look and instantly erupted like a volcano, waving her trembling fingers at Dorian in outrage. You bastard. What sin did I commit by stopping here? What did I ever do to you that you have to curse me to die? Do you know who I am? The lady's voice bellowed, making everyone give her a second look again. Could it be that she was a famous person who decided to dress up somewhat ordinarily to come out and play? Or could it be that she was actually a wealthy lady in disguise? Everyone stunned their eyes even more to listen in on the lady's identity. How exciting! What could she be? The lady raised her nose heavenwards and puffed her chest out proudly while looking down at Dorian condescendingly. Ignorant fool. I am the personal nanny for the Jia family. That's right. Their personal nanny. So now, are you scared? Are you scared, boy? Audience. Crickets. Everyone looked at the lady in a daze before looking at themselves again. You look at me, I look at you. You look at me, I look towards the sky. This. PFF. Their lips quivered hard while they tried to hold in their laughter. For some, they didn't know whether to laugh or to cry instead. Hello, sister. So you're just a nanny, and you're making all this noise. They almost thought that she was some big person's wife. But who would have known that she was just a wooden instead? Nonetheless, they still respected the lady and understood where she was coming from too. You know. If she was truly from the prestigious Jia family, then she sure was higher than them in society. Just listening to the words, Jia family, had already shocked many silly. The Jia family was one of the prominent first-rank families within the city, alongside the Gu, Ho, Tian, Bo, and Su families. Rumor has it that these families were so wealthy that they could use money as toilet paper for decades and still be super rich. For sure, there were other wealthy families in the city. But they fell in the category of the wealthy middle-class groups when compared to the Big Six. Yes. The Tian family was still in the Big Six. Why? Because Dorian's uncle was still running all the companies. Even though he himself wasn't a Tian. So the Tian enterprises and multinational companies were still afloat. It was just Dorian and his parents that were kicked away. Heh. Soon, he would come for what belonged to him. But not after waking his parents up. Of course, he had a hunch that his uncle would be the one to come to him first. Who knows? The Jia family. Everyone's eyes changed when they looked at the young lady who was now the center of attention. Indeed. Even though she wore ordinary clothes, the quality was still higher than that of a regular person's. Plus, her skin was still well maintained compared to theirs. Yes. Even though she was just a worker for the GIAs, she still had to look good. It was, in a way, a form of advertisement in competition amongst the wealthy families as well. Look. When one thinks of entering or seeing a noble household, they will be expecting to see stunning well-maintained butlers, maids, gardeners, workers and so on. They had to look good, even if they were 40. Their salaries were way higher than everyday folks. So if their skins looked cracked, or as if they had been suffering all year round, then didn't that indirectly say that the Jia household had been maltreating them? If that's the case, then who would ever want to work for wealthy families? All this was maintenance and advertisements that screamed out their wealth to the world. Showing wealth also gave off respect in any profession too. It showed that they were capable and could get things done at the drop of a hat. And the more people licked their feet for privileges, the more scared and afraid these people get off these wealthy families. No one would think of crossing them for fear of retaliation. The wealthy had thought things through. Hell. Even when it came to the Tian family, Butler Sheng and those working with Dorian looked well taken care of too. It was just the way things went. And so when people looked at the woman, they couldn't help enjoying her good fortune, as well as feeling a bit jealous. Yes. They also wished that they could work in such families. Even if they were to be gardeners across the many estate fields or those in charge of cleaning some gigantic fountains around. The pay was all high. And seeing the way people stared at her, the lady in question started being overconfident as she squared her shoulders and tried to imitate the demeanor of how the noble ladies in the Jia household stood. Looking at the awe, envy, and countless emotions the crowd faced her, the lady couldn't help smiling viciously. Brat. See if I don't clean you up today and make you kneel before me in apology. How dare you curse this lady? Chapter 55 A Death Guarantee. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Everyone watched the scene as if watching some intense drama show. Hee. The lady versus the boy. Who would win? Everyone watched as the last continuously sprayed her words around like a machine gun in rage. Look here, boy. This lady is just in her early 20s and is a vibrant lady. So I have more than 70 years ahead of me before I die. And if you keep talking about death, then don't blame me for showing you the power that I, a Jia nanny, holds. The lady said while trying to intimidate Dorian. Of course, she hadn't seen his limo earlier, or else she might have never spoken out like this. Additionally, Butler Sheng and the best stood around Dorian, making her think that they too were just spectators. Again, she didn't see any fancy watches or something that would say that Dorian was rich. Sure. His clothes did look high quality. But who knows? Maybe he should be a new worker in some noble estate instead. Why a new worker? This was because of his young face and age. And coupled with the fact that he was setting up a booth here, then didn't this mean that he was right on the money and might not even be favored at his job? He probably offended his master, leading to a sharp cut in his salary. Or maybe he was a newbie corporate worker who got laid off recently. Either way, the more she stared at Dorian in scrutiny, the more she felt that he was a person swimming in poverty but pretending to be rich. Could it be that he had received a lot of people because of his stunning face? Dorian was too lazy to pay attention to her and just gave her one final warning. Whether you take my advice or not, that is your problem. But your death is sealed. Heh. Are you threatening me with death? No. It's a guarantee. A guarantee. Why, you little. The lady choked in rage as she started making her way towards Dorian with her hands stretched out, thinking of choking the little imp to death. But just as she was about to move forward, her phone began ringing vigorously. Ring ring ring. The lady looked at Dorian unwillingly before answering the call. TCH. In her mind, he had been saved by the bell. Her phone suddenly rang, giving her no time to respond to Dorian. She answered her phone, and in a blink of an eye, her expression turned grimmer. ****. Yes. Yes. I'll be right over, boss. The lady said hastily before making for the hills. But not after cursing Dorian a little. As for her, she had only come out for a bit of fresh air. And now, she had to go back to work as a live-in nanny. One should know that just recently, she and the guards had somehow lost the little miss. And by the time she found the little miss, they realized that she was wet and dripping off water from head to toe. The revelation made them turn pale when they realized that she had been in the lake. At that time, the hidden guards were also shocked because during that time, some commotion happened around them that caused them to turn their attention away from the young miss for no more than 3 seconds. And by the time they looked back, she was gone. But luckily, they found her. Or it would have been their heads. Thinking of Dorian's words, the lady scoffed in disdain. Bastard. The last thought while marching and stomping away on her low-inch heels in rage. Everyone watched the lady's silhouette fade away with countless thoughts in their minds. As for Chiyu, she only felt pitiful for the woman before getting up from the seat and bowing towards Dorian. Thank you, Grandmaster. I will do as you've said and go to the address at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Good. Now go. With that, Chiyu took her brother and left while still trembling at all that had happened. Okay. The show seemed to be over. So everyone dispersed from the scene. And from time to time, the other booth sellers glanced at Dorian inquisitively but dared not speak or say anything. Hey! Many of them had seen his kung fu skills. So who would dare open their mouths carelessly? The air around the stalls was very tense, as everyone now felt like they were walking on pins just being around Dorian. Could luck truly be drawn out? Would his booth really be a divination one? In that case, can they ask about the marriages of their children or grandchildren? Everyone's lips thinned helplessly as they suddenly found that their legs seemed heavier all of a sudden. Sigh. Well, since this Grandmaster said he would still be coming here for a while, then they would have more to see him and also assess his skills to find out if he was a fraud or just someone who was using kung fu to impress and vogue them into giving him money for divination. But then again, why would a rich young master do all this when he had money? Or could it be that everything he had was rented, only to put out this show? There were too many doubts and ideas within their hearts. But, they could only swallow them all and watch the actions of this Grandmaster during the next few days or weeks. Heh! They would want to see what this guy was really up to. Like so, Dorian and the rest stayed at the booths for a few more hours before packing up and leaving things to the lady who owned the booth. Remember, we will come on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays. Yes. 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 Everything will be arranged before you arrive. The lady replied cautiously, causing Butler Shing to ease up and smile. Good. With that, Butler Shing entered the limo, and the vehicle then left the scene amidst all the curious eyes. Degree, what a day. Looking at the limousine drive off, everyone could only say that from today onwards, this place would become bubblier than it usually was. But while the show was over for many, when it came to Dorian and his crew, it was far from being over. Chapter 56 The Gia Residence. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The limo pulled away. And Rollin, who had been driving, calmly glanced at Dorian through the rear mirror. Grandmaster. Where to now? Dorian opened his eyes calmly before letting out a sly grin. Home, then Gia Estate. The reason he came out today was to look for a big fish. That's right. For the land he wanted for the academy, the 10 million deposited into his account wouldn't be enough. So he needed to find another big fish before the land auction tomorrow evening. But with the sort of unnatural deadly aura he saw on that arrogant lady from earlier on, he knew that their matter was far more serious than Gosoda's issue. So how can he let such a fat prey go? Typically, he wouldn't even bother to help. Yes. He wasn't a saint. As a heavenly exorcist, he would never see cases like this and just keep silent. Meaning he would indeed give out advice to them. But whether they listen or not was none of his business. Additionally, he also chose to help because he wanted to exorcise more and rank up his exorcist level fast. So he didn't mind going out of his way to save these Gia people. The system, who didn't understand why Dorian chose to help out, was very pleased about his decision. It mumbled to itself in joy. Ha 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 ha. It knew its host was a good person deep down. Look. Didn't he go out of his way to save these people? As a worker for the heavens, doing good, being heroic, selfless and saving countless souls was the way it should be. The system was very pleased with its host's decision. Nervous face, Gia Estate. Everyone suddenly recalled that arrogant lady from earlier on and immediately understood. Butler Shing crossed his arms over his chest with a serious expression on his face. All right. It looks like tonight, they will have to get busy again. With that, the limo speeded up back to the Tian estate. The vehicle speeded up, and they were off. Meanwhile, within the Gia estate, unbeknownst to many, today was indeed their death day, Gia residence. Thup. 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 The heavy footsteps of many echoed across the massive central kitchen as the staff quickly began distributing food to all corners of the grand estate. They sent food towards all estate buildings and regions, serving the numerous guards, live.in maids, butlers and others around. As for the main Gia family, their food was now being hauled on trolleys by an elite staff diligently trained and trusted. Their food had already been poisoned. Tested by 5 testers and 2 dogs, before it could even be deemed edible. Yes. If there were any chemical substances or poisons in there, the testers also had their ways of knowing too. The Gia family was a military family, with elite officials all in the army that were idolized within the country. To mess with the Gia family is akin to seeking death. Of course, they also had branches and businesses around too. But, without them knowing it, someone or something was coming after them. 15 minutes more until dinner time. The trolleys were all pushed towards the grand main table, and the butlers and maids quickly worked fast in laying out the food, water and drinks too. Each person's meal was different depending on their tastes and preferences. And just 3 minutes before dinner time, the lead butler blew his military whistle, and everyone quickly took off as if they were within the military. They always served food very close to mealtime so that the food would remain hot for longer. Of course, they also sealed and covered the food too. Head butler Fong looked at his pocket watch while looking at the stairway calmly. In a minute or so, the family should descend. The butler and a few others standing around the dining table in wait calmly looked above the stairs when they heard the faint sounds of footsteps descending the beautifully crafted stony, marble-like staircase. It was all so grand and picture-worthy, lined with golden rails. Today was a very special day within the main Jia household. The old marshal, who retired a while back, had finally returned from his 5-month vacation abroad. So his oldest son, who took care of the family business, and lived full-time in the main estate, had of course prepared for his grand welcome. As for the marshal's other children, they had their own estates and were mainly within the army all the time, either being soldiers, marines or navy officials. Of course, his other sons were out in the army, but their wives and children had to come over to welcome the old marshal. Thus, they had long arrived during the day and were all upstairs in upper guest rooms. The main Jia estate had over 15 buildings in it, with numerous statues, lawns, gardens and other amenities all around. That said, there were indeed separate guest buildings. But those were used for non-family guests. Typically, within the main building that was as wide as a commercial building, there were over 3 grand guest rooms on the second floor, 8 first rooms on the third floor and 12 guest rooms on the fourth and highest floor. Thus when the family arrived earlier, they were all shown to their rooms on the third or fourth floor instead. The old marshal had no daughters. Just sons, which made him a little sad. So when he finally got a granddaughter, he treated her like his world. Who didn't know that the old marshal's only granddaughter was the apple of his eyes? All his other grandchildren were boys, except the little baby that miraculously graced their family some years back. For her, he could even give all his wealth to. Luckily, the old marshal's children were all wealthy, having their own separate resources and things going on for them. They were all very independent and hardly used anything from the old marshal. If not, maybe they would have been greedy and jealous of the little granddaughter ages ago. The staff kept their heads bowed while listening to the several footsteps that echoed out louder and louder as the family descended. The head butler in turn walked closer to the family and gave a very low, but noble bow with one hand on his chest. "My lords, madams, young masters and little miss, dinner is served." Old Jia nodded with his usual cold gaze before turning his attention back to his little granddaughter at his side. His expression changed so much from cold to worry that one would even doubt that if he had a split personality or something. "Little Didi. Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere? Do you need grandfather to carry you?" The little girl who now had the undivided attention of everyone was called Jia Zitadai. After listening to old Jia, she only looked at her grandfather and gave a mysterious but chilling smile at him. For almost everyone in the house, the little miss had turned into a gloomy person altogether, who hardly spoke and would only smile crookedly from time to time, making them all feel uneasy. But the family wasn't too fazed at all. They were a family of warriors and people who had been in the army and had been brought up to accept all challenges in life. They got a psychiatrist who found that the little girl was just passing through some unknown trauma. But the problem was that they didn't know what she saw that could dramatize her so much. Yes. What exactly caused it? Everyone's expressions were cold when thinking that the only princess of the Jia family had experienced trauma. Even the little girl's cousins who had been long taught to protect the little princess, were also very concerned about it all too. Since they arrived, she hadn't played with them or even greeted them surely the way she typically did. And though they might be young, with their family training, they instantly knew that something was wrong. For them, someone had clearly bullied their Jia princess into the way she was. As for the adults, their thoughts were somewhat on that line but more deeply rooted than the youngsters. What exactly caused the trauma? Did the little girl get molested? The guard said they searched the entire scene, but who knew if the culprit had long escaped before they got there? Or could it be that the little girl saw something she wasn't supposed to and cocooned herself into her shell? Was she threatened with a knife on her throat or a gun? Their minds were all stunning with theories which made them all distressed for the princess even more. But what worried them the most was that the little princess began smiling and chuckling at herself all alone at times, making them fear that her mental state was collapsing. Will their little princess be bullied and laughed at? Maybe she will. But their strength was enough to cover her for a lifetime and hopefully get her treated. That said, the culprits that did this shouldn't even think of escaping. He. Mess with the Jia family. How bold. Chapter 57 The Jia Princess. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old Jia thinned his lips worriedly. According to the report, it's been almost 2 days since his granddaughter had come back soaking. But since then, she hasn't consumed any food at all. If this continued, then wouldn't she just end up starving herself? No. He would never allow that to happen. Old Jia threw away his negative thoughts and gave Didi a warm and encouraging smile. Come, little Didi. Come, let's go eat. For today, you don't need to follow the sitting rules. You will seat my grandpa. How does that sound? The little girl tilted her head to the side before broadening her smile even more, making old Jia feel pumped. Ha 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 ha. Good. Good. Let's eat. With that, the old man returned fiercely at those standing around the table. Well, what the hell are you all waiting for? Didn't you hear what I just said? Bring Didi's food and cutlery to the seat on my left. Hurry up before I grind you all to dust. Yes, Marshal. They replied before swiftly taking off. Meanwhile, Didi's parents, the old marshal's first son, Wei Jia, and his wife Pia Qi, only looked at their daughter, feeling a sharp pain within their hearts. In fact, everyone else also felt it was unfortunate. Mrs. Pia took out her handkerchief and secretly patted her eyes as fast as she could, wiping out the tears that succeeded in escaping her eyes. I must not cry. I must not cry. I must not cry. She chanted, trying to hypnotize herself out of her blubbering state. At the moment, she had used makeup to cover the red skin across her face. Her eyes were moist and teary. Looking, and her whole demeanor felt depressed. But she knew that she had to be strong for her daughter. Additionally, the old marshal didn't like others crying so much close to his granddaughter. The fear was that their sorrow would also affect the little girl, making her fall into depression as well. You want to cry? Then cry far away from his granddaughter, please. For now, yes. The girl suffered some trauma. But they, as her family, had to pull her out of her depression and bring warmth to her. So he forbade them to cry as if the little girl were already dead. In the meantime, the old marshal was also concerned about something else as well. He came back from his trip just for this. He looked at his little angel lovingly while transferring more food from his servings to her plate. Eat. Eat. Eat up, little princess. Look. Grandpa's eating it. So it must be good, right? Try it, little princess. Come on. Eat up for Grandpa's sake, okay? Old Jia begged the girl to at least eat something, but she only just shook her head stubbornly before giggling and smiling like a silly thing instead. Crack. Something within old Jia's mind broke as his hands started trembling in rage. He thought he could bear it and handle things after dinner. But as it stands now, he was afraid that if he didn't solve his anger, he might end up growing insane too. Swish. He turned his head like lightning, staring at Butler Foam with a murderous scorching stare. Where is she? Where is that incompetent nanny? Butler Foam, who was also a powerful military personnel, felt his heart skip a bit when he saw old Jia's fierce eyes. Yes. These were the terrifying eyes of the old marshal he remembered. It has been a long time since he saw the old marshal this pissed. In his heart, even though he had no pity for the nanny, he couldn't help secretly lighting a candle for her. Sigh. She had just one job. And she messed up. Her ending was already certain. Replying to the marshal. I had already called her and informed her about your arrival and summoning order. The head driver has specifically gone to locate and pick her up from whatever she had been. And they should be arriving at the estate in no more than 8 minutes. Old Jia's eyes glowed fiercely. Good. Good. Upon arrival, get her in the main hall immediately. And as for the hidden guards who were supposed to be guarding her, I hear that they have already begun receiving their punishment. Butler Fong nodded. Yes, Marshal. They have already begun receiving punishment as per the first master's orders. Old Jia turned to his first son sternly. What were your orders? Wei Jia pared his meal and raised his murderous eyes at his father as well. Of course, he wasn't annoyed or angered by his old Jia but was also waiting to strangle the nanny to death as well. As the first son who oversaw all Jia businesses for the entire family, he was indeed a busy man. He had been away for a business meeting and had also arrived not too long ago. When he heard the report over the phone, he gave his orders and had been waiting for the nanny to get back. They hadn't punished her along with the guards, making her feel that she was off the hook. But in reality, they had been waiting to punish her face to face. Wei Jia squinted his eyes coldly at old Jia. Unlike his father, he was indeed a man of very few words. They received twice the load for the abnormal family punishment. Old Jia sneered. Only twice the load. Why not 5 times higher? Since when did you start getting soft? Humph, Butler Fong. Pass down my order. I want them to bleed 5 times more. Butler Fong had goosebumps imagining it and could only tap the device in his ears and relay the order. 5 times more. F*******. Even he didn't know if he could survive that. After all, the punishment class/rank was the abnormal one. That's right. Within the Jia family, there were 4 different classes of punishment, with the most terrifying one being the abnormal one. Firstly, if one were sent for abnormal punishment, only 5% of those sent there make it out with their tanks intact. Of course, the Jia family was a military family that did their best to abide by the laws if they wanted to remain on top. Their enemies were constantly watching their every move. So unless necessary, they wouldn't just be killing off their subordinates who served them locally like that. No. If one couldn't finish the punishment given to them, they would be sent back to the lowest guard rank ever. They would sometimes be sent back to other third world countries to do work there for years and years without coming back. It was almost the same as being exiled. And they would only come back after their exile phase had passed. Some got sent for 3 years, others 15. They would be placed within the country's armies, spies or troops stationed out of the country and would follow the jobs assigned to them directly. At the same time, there was always someone to monitor them, so trying to escape was futile. In short, here in the Jia estate, they did live well, received so much money to take care of their families, received scholarship opportunities for their children and several other benefits. So leaving the country to go out and suffer was something that no one truly wanted to happen. That said, when the first master doubled the abnormal punishment, Butler Fong felt it hard for him to imagine what those who endured the punishment would look like at the end. But now, listening to old Jia's order requesting that the punishment should be 5 times heavier, Butler Fong was in a state of shock and horror for those already undergoing punishment. Like so, everyone on the table hardly had any appetite since the little princess herself didn't want to eat. Thus, they all looked at each other and decided to cut dinner time today. With that, the entire family made their way to the grand hall to wait for the nanny. Of course, the other 2 wives cushioned Pia, comforting her as they walked on. They couldn't imagine how they would feel if something like that happened to their sons. To be honest, their personalities were a little fiercer than Pia. So if it were them, that nanny might have already received hell from them. I tell you to watch over my daughter, and you focus on reading some stupid novel while my daughter gets traumatized. Ichim. That nanny was asking for a beating. And this was why people got skeptical when it came to hiring nannies. The little boy walked behind their grandfather and Didi, looking at her from time to time sympathetically. In short, everyone's mood was depressed as they took their seats within the grand hall. The children remained because they were all above the age of 7. And in this family, handling matters like these was done in the eyes of everyone to allow them to grow fast and see the cruelty of the world. Well, only Didi had been sheltered. The little boys had long been exposed to the family rules and ways. So they took their seats, folded their legs and leaned back silently, waiting for the main star of the show to arrive. And right on cue, the main doors at the extreme end of the hall were forcefully pushed open. Bam! She was here. Chapter 58 Hullen's Wild Thoughts. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Bam! The doors opened, and everyone's expression grew cold while watching the nanny get dragged in. The lady's disheveled hair covered her face, and from a single glance, one could see that she had lost me of her shoes too. Her breathing grew heavier as she tried to shake off the firm hands gripping her harshly. And the moment her eyes came into contact with the cold people seated within the hall, the blooming fear within her grew even more profound. Yes. Before the driver picked her up, she thought that something might have happened to the little miss since the miss is a little mental. So she thought that maybe they were summoning her urgently to look after the miss. But after entering the vehicle, she realized that seated by her sides were 2 guards, blocking her from fleeing. Additionally, out of nowhere, she then saw 3 other black vehicles chasing behind them too. And at the same time, 3 other vehicles appeared ahead of the vehicle she was in too. Even if she was dumb, she then understood that the summoning order wasn't entirely about the little miss. Ha 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 ha. She was so stupid to believe that they wouldn't punish her for what happened a few days ago. The soft-hearted mistress just told her to go back to her duties after the incident. And she secretly heard that the guards who were supposed to be protecting the miss were punished instead. So she felt that things should now have come to an end. After all, if one looked at it deeply, it was the guards who failed to do their job of protecting the miss and not her, right? Yes. 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 Thinking like that, she had been very lax since then, and everything had returned to normal for her too. So she didn't think much of things. But who would have known that it was all a lie? They clearly knew that they still came after her for the incident, so why did they give her a false sense of security? How wicked. The nanny grumbled with anger in her eyes as countless seeds of hatred were implanted in her. Of course, over the time working with the Gias, Hullen had also envied her mistress too. That useless woman was too foolish and weak-hearted by nature and was nowhere worthy of being the first mistress of the Gia household. If not for her background, would she even get the chance to marry the first master? Hullen couldn't lie. When she took on the job, she was also looking for the opportunity to seduce the 29-year-old first master. To her, how could that useless Pia be worth the first master? Hullen just couldn't control her envy when seeing a woman similar in age to her marry rich while she was always finding stingy men who couldn't even buy her expensive cars and villas. And subconsciously, even when watching the little miss, she wouldn't do a good job at it because of jealousy. But she dared not overstep her boundaries yet because she knew that there were always guards watching. Thus, to keep her job, she had to act as the kind and gracious lady that she was. She knew that everything probably get reported back to the first master, so she had to give off her best performance at all times. And secretly, she had long taken the first master as her husband. Yes. She should be the one living this lavish life and not that stupid vase. So subconsciously, she started thinking of Pia as her stumbling block. To her, Pia's act of always seeming kind and always offering her more money was a way of showing off wealth and looking down on her. To her, the first master must have wanted to forgive her. But it should have been that B********* that talked him into punishing her. After entering the vehicle and relaxing her predicament, Hullen blamed everything on that scheming B*******ch. So the question now was whether that White Lotus mistress would use this opportunity to make the first master kill her. Boom! A fearful explosion erupted in her mind as she tried to flee countless times before they got into the estate. She tried screaming through the window to ask for help from passerbys and even began crying, pleading and begging the guards to let her go. The old marshal was back, as well as the first master. Because of how busy these two were, even if they were around the estate, she might not even be able to see them for months. In fact, some people have worked here for years and have yet to see their employers' faces once. Even if the first master and the rest still decided to sit in one place and never left the estate, only the top or most qualified people could see them. And she, as the nanny, had only seen the first mistress, the little Mrs. Mother. She only kept in contact with that ****ch, the first mistress alone. Which to her was because Pia didn't want her to see the handsome first master, whose handsomeness was typically the talk of the entire country. But even though she hadn't seen the old marshal, the first master or all the other masters of the Jia family, she still heard about the rumors about their brutality. There were rumors that they had dug out the hearts of many and even fed them to the dogs out of spite. Hullen didn't believe the first master would hurt her since her delusions told her that the first master must be secretly in love with her. To Hullen, her issue was with the old marshal and that scheming Pia. Yes. Because of family duty, they might force the first master to punish her heavily, killing her and burying her where no one could find. Then if that were the case, wouldn't her long-time plan to enter the Jia household fail? Hullen's chest grew tight with unwillingness. No. No. She can never die without enjoying all these riches. They should be hers. All hers. Chapter 59. The time was right. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hullen was going crazy when she thought about how unfair the world truly was. And it was now and then that Dorian's words echoed in her mind. Someone is claiming to be what they aren't. And tonight, your death has been sealed. What? She felt her mind going haywire in dizziness as her pupils dilated heavily. He knew. Ha 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 ha. That bastard was cursing her to death but warning her of the Jia family's plans to kill her. Hullen grabbed the carpet with trembling hands as she felt a wave of regret, hatred, fear, anxiety and countless emotions engulf her entire being. If she had just listened, then she might have had the chance to flee, right? TSK. As expected. Before pride came fall. Blame her. Blame her for being too prideful to listen to the youngster. But she didn't listen. And now, she had fallen victim to this ****Chase scheme. So even amidst her fear, how could she not be angry? Her entire body trembled while gripping the carpet. And when she finally lifted her face and stared at Pia hatefully, the entire Jia family was taken aback. Especially Pia. Weren't they the ones who were supposed to be angry? Why did it seem like it was they, the Jia family, who were scum while she was the innocent one? Old Jia squinted his eyes, releasing his murderous aura towards Hullen, subconsciously making her shower in fear. So, you are my granddaughter's incompetent nanny. Hullen wanted to reply, but her words seemed stuck in her throat. She could only nod her head frighteningly, daring not to thoroughly look at old Jia. Old Jia looked at her and sneered. I heard you're a very chatty person. So why don't you speak? Bam! He tapped his cane hard on the floor, making Hullen's heart jump in fear. Well, what's the matter with you? Can't speak now. Cat got your tongue. Pia looked at the old man stuffing his chest and hurriedly tried to calm him down. Father, please. Remember your condition. Anyone who saw her actions knew that First Lady Pia was indeed a gentle soul. But her actions in Hullen's eyes were that of a scheming lotus. Hullen looked at the first master with deep-rooted lust in her eyes while also trying to look as pitiful as possible to him. She was also so blown away by his awesomeness that her envy of Pia was even more radiant than ever. Heh! Old Gia saw through her subtle movements and now had a hunch what sort of person this Hullen was. He scoffed at the thought of her whimsical fantasies. With his years of experience in this world, what had he not seen? Such a person was definitely unworthy of looking after his precious granddaughter. Father, please, your health. You need to. Old Gia raised his hands to silence Pia's concerns before getting up from his grand chair like the overlord he was. Thup. 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 Step by step, the old marshal made his way towards the disheveled Hullen, making her mortified. He finally stopped beside her and used his cane to raise her chin upwards. And now, their eyes were locked on each other. Gulp. Hullen swallowed hard when coming into close contact with old Gia's fierce eyes. Instantly, time seemed frozen in place. So, Miss Hullen. After receiving our generous salary, benefits and other perks for your job. Not only did you appreciate your job, but did so at the expense of my precious granddaughter. So, tell me. Do you think that I will ever let you go? What do you want to do to me? Hullen's eyes opened dreadfully while recalling Dorian's words. Kill. 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 They were going to kill her. She began inching back while shaking her head in horror as the shadow of death quickly covered her. Her entire face was now drenched in sweat and tears, enabling her hair to cling onto her face even more. No. No. Sir. You can't kill me. Killing is against the law. And you, as a marshal, will be arrested once caught. So if you kill me now, all that you've worked for will go down the drain just like that. Sir. I know that someone vicious might have stimulated you to kill me. But please, don't fall prey to their schemes. You might not know this, but I met a random stranger outside who told me that someone is not who they claim to be. And because of the person, I would end up dying today. At first, I didn't believe it. But now, I do. Freeze. Old Gia paused while looking at Hullen thoughtfully. You said someone randomly told you that your death is sealed within the Gia household today. Could it be the people who caused his granddaughter's trauma? Upon seeing old Gia's interest peaked up, a dim torch of hope within her now burned brightly. Yes. If she could convince them all about the warning that guy gave, then she wouldn't have to die. She felt like she would be a hero for exposing the truth after all. Who knew if this ch had secretly planned to kidnap her own daughter just to deal with her. With that, she desperately inched closer to old Gia with her knees, trying her best to convince him as hard as she could before turning her eyes towards Pia, sending an artifact gaze her way. Sir. I have no reason to lie to you. That person said that Miss Pia was pretending to be who she wasn't. Yes, sir. Pia is the problem here. She is just a white lotus who has been deceiving you all. She is pushing you to take action while keeping her hands clean from it all. Sir. Because she is jealous of me, she keeps trying to stop the love between the first master and myself. If anyone should be blamed, it should be Miss Pia. Pia. Silence. The room stayed dead silent as everyone listened to the rantings of a mad lady. Pia was shocked, confused and angered by the turn of events. She had never been pretending at all. And she sure as hell wasn't any damn white lotus. Moreover, how come this Hullen had been targeting her husband, and she didn't know about it all this time? In Hullen's mouth, she was described as a villain who stopped true love between her husband and Hullen. But did this Hullen forget that her husband was a married man? Ha 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 ha. Ridiculous. Wei Jia didn't even bother defending himself because it was just too absurd. Even though he had only seen Hullen's photo from her file, he had never met the lady in person. So what was the love affair between them? Wei Jia's face was a man of few words. So unless necessary, he would never bother talking. The only thing that piqued Wei Jia was that some random stranger had told this whimsical nanny about her death being sealed today in the Jia household. But the issue was that even with the mistakes Hulun made, they never thought of actually killing her, but making sure that her life was hell instead. So, who was going to seal her death? Who was the person in their home pretending to be what they weren't? Could it be that the trauma incident was just the beginning of some elaborate scheme by others? If so, then could it be that the culprits had already initiated the estate and would take action tonight? Wei Jia and old Jia's expressions turned grim as they hastily faced the guards, giving out a simple nod to them. Those who have always been with them were skilled professionals who could also see the issue with Hulun's statement too. So instantly, they were on the move. But too bad, the culprit they were looking for was right before their very eyes. Ha 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 ha. In just a few more minutes, the moon would be just right. And by then, it will be time. Chapter 60. A Night to Remember. You are listening at novelfull.audio. VRMM. Driving towards the Jia estate, Dorian and his gang were already dashing towards the scene like crazy. Rollin, I understand you race for fun out of the mansion. Rollin nodded confidently. Yes, Grandmaster. Good. Then what are you waiting for? Go faster. Dorian's cold voice seemed to ignite a flame within Rollin as he suddenly grinned dastardly and switched gears like crazy. Everyone, hold on to your hats. I tend to be a little bit crazy when I race. Zhu Lin and Butler Sheng. Don't need to tell me twice. Zhu Lin briefly turned to look at Butler Sheng, who in turn gazed at him too. And in that split second, they seemed to have the ability of telepathy. Bam! Bam! The duo planted their feet firmly to the ground, checked the strength of their seatbelt and began holding only any part of the car they could. T0T. At this point, they couldn't help looking at Dorian in an aggrieved manner, with invisible tears pouring out of their eyes. But before they could even finish their little checks and safety procedures, the vehicle suddenly took a crazy turn, pushing them forward to meet their makers. Of course, that's what would have happened if not for the miraculous and god invention called the seatbelt. The duo looked at their seatbelts as if looking at a superhero. And for sure, before they could thank it in their hearts, crazy racer Rollin was at it again. VRRMM. The vehicle drove towards the estate like a rolling disaster. Dorian, who still hadn't moved an inch with his hands and feet crossed, couldn't help looking at the Jia estate before shifting his gaze to the moon above. Amidst the pitiful cross of the dup held captive to Rollin's skills, Dorian sent an orange whiff of light into the vehicle with his fingers. Rollin. When we get there, break through anything in your path. Time is running out. Yes, Grandmaster, Rollin replied while shifting gears again and smiling slyly. Crashing into things. Well, it just so happened that he also liked those sorts of things too. Good. It was time to crash the gates, make noise and get in. Hopefully, the limo doesn't get too damaged. But hey. In the end, he would have awed the Grandmaster, right? Big smiley face, VRRMM. Like so, a crazy Rollin was ready to show off his skills to Dorian, forgetting about his other two comrades beside him in tears. They wanted to throw up but dared not do so. Damn it. Why did they allow this maniac to take the wheel? Sigh. They were doomed. Meanwhile, back in the main building within the massive estate, the air became pregnant and heavy with tension. Listening to Hulun's words, old Jia and Wei Jia nodded at their men, sending them off running and moving about in a flash, confusing the rest in the room even more. What was going on here? Pia, the other wives and their children were all very perplexed and somewhat anxious too. But before they could even make heads or tails of the matter, Wei Jia's calm voice echoed through their eyes. It's nothing. Everyone heard his words and didn't believe him at all. If it were nothing, all the men around the room wouldn't be acting so vigilant, as if they were preparing for war. Wei Jia's lead guard, Ren Jin, stood frozen in place with his eyes darting non-stop and his fingers on the device in his ears, listening to all the reports around. And in a flash, he turned around, walked towards Wei Jia and spoke in a whisper tone. Sir. All regions are secured. No enemies sighted yet. Tell them to keep watching all corners of the buildings and estate diligently. The enemy might already have infiltrated the estate. We can't take any chances. In the meantime, get all 4 choppers ready. Yes. With that, the Renjin swiftly moved away and also collaborated with old Jia's main guard to also get things done swiftly too. Even though old Jia was still living in the old estate, he had long handed things to the first master. In other words, it was the first master's men that typically called the shots unless old Jia put his foot down. Thus, it was Renjin's duty to secure the safety of them all, even though he would still be working alongside old Jia's men. With that, the massive hall had now been thrown into even bigger chaos than before. Hulun on the other hand, was in hell when she realized that her situation was still a delicate one. Her nails dug into the flesh like daggers, the more terrified she was. How? How can this be? When she passed on the message and saw them move around, she thought it was because they believed her. But now, with no one even bothered to talk to her, or more specifically, tell her that she was free from death, she became even more anxious, waiting for some sign from them. However, how did it look like these people weren't playing according to the script she had in mind? Damn it. Hulun gritted her teeth angrily. They must still not believe her fully because of this ****ch and her cursed white lotus powers. Everyone was faced with their own little thoughts and dilemmas. But suddenly, something bizarre occurred. Blink. Blink. 2 blinks from all the chandeliers, everyone froze in place in shock. This had never happened before and was a disgrace within a home such as theirs. They paused all their actions, even while talking, as their words now seemed to be caught in the back of their throats. Blink. Blink. There it was again. Everyone, as if on cue, frowned deeply as they slowly raised their heads upwards to stare at the many chandeliers positioned in different regions above the massive hall. Before, only 2 chandeliers flickered. But now, all of them flickered spasmodically. How odd. Several people thought this, but only old Jia, Wei Jia, lead guard Renjin, Butler Feng and a few other guards felt something was wrong. Call it training instincts, but like animals in the wild, they could sense that it wasn't all just a coincidence. Their hearts sank deeply as the thought penetrated their minds. Damn it. The enemies were here, weren't they? Katchak. As if in an old Western movie, everyone took out their weapons, stood with their feet open, back hunched and sent forth their eyes in different directions, up down, left right, and even the ground below too. Seeing their actions, the ladies also stood and enclosed the children vigilantly. They weren't fools. Their Jia family members were warriors and skilled professionals. So if everyone brought out their weapons, then there was something bizarre about the scene. As for some of the guards, without wasting any time, they surrounded the ladies and children too, while others focused on old Jia and Wei Jia instead. But when everyone was immersed in finding the culprit, the little girl suddenly slipped through the cracks of people protecting her, as if she were a ninja, and made her way closer to the large floor-to-ceiling glass wall, staring at the moon outside intensely. Old Jia and those who spotted her didn't even think of how she escaped the military barrier of men surrounding her and the others, but were more focused on getting close to her. Little Didi. It's not safe. It's not safe. Come towards Grandpa, okay? Old Jia said anxiously while making his way to his precious granddaughter. At the same time, 2 other guards moved quicker than his old bones, trying to dash towards her too. Of course, Butler Feng also clapped his hands thrice, making the automatic blinds go down. Yes. It was dangerous for the little girl to be so close to the glass walls. The enemy should already be lurking in the buildings, and even the outer estate paths too. So what if some sniper shot her? Well, it was indeed true that the glass was bulletproof. But one shouldn't forget that a few years ago, the latest high-tech vibratory sound bullet was created. That bullet would at least produce a crack on their windows. And as everyone knows, if one shot a regular bullet on that same crack, it should form a big enough hole that would go straight into the building. These new bullets were only permitted to be used by the military. However, they were still also illegally sold at black markets too. Typically, they wouldn't be worried that the little girl was this close to the glass walls, but since they didn't know the enemy they were with, who knew if their enemy might have the bullet? He, Butler Fong, and the entire Jia family might never be able to forgive themselves for such a blunder. Thus, Butler Fong closed the thin, shield-like blinds while the other two guards rushed towards the little girl who was still staring at the moon like crazy. "Little miss, it's not safe. Little miss." The girl had her back facing them and acted as if she was deaf. But since she had trauma, they felt that she might just be in a daze or something. However, something even weirder happened. The blinds that seemed to be lowering, now stopped abruptly. And finally, the lights began flickering. Blink. 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 PFFF blackout. Everyone's heart was in a mess, as the only light source that now illuminated the entire hall was that coming from the gigantic moon that, for some reason, now looked like it was way closer to their home than before. But as logical humans, their thoughts weren't on this, but on a potential sniper or enemy attack lurking in the dark hall. The two guards making their way towards the girl finally reached her and stretched their hands forth to turn her around. However, what happened next was something the Jia family would never forget in a million years. The little girl looked at the moon and giggled playfully. The night was hers.